Just under a day away from the ECAC Championships up in Lake Placid, New York, where the Quinnipiac Bobcats will be taking on the Dartmouth Big Green in the ECAC semifinals. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special Q30 Sports ECAC Championship preview. I'm Andrew Badillo, and I'm joined alongside Quinnipiac men's ice hockey beat reporter Kyle Vassar. Kyle, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Andrew. I can't wait for these semifinals to begin.
Semifinals are going to be great, but also the quarterfinals last weekend for both Quinnipiac and Dartmouth were also great. The Bobcats beating Cornell in their best-of-3 series, 2-1, and Dartmouth traveled down to New Haven. They beat Yale. They swept them 2-0. Kyle, let's take a look at both of the series.
Yeah, well, it was fairly surprising this past weekend with Quinnipiac having to go into their third game against the number 8 Cornell Big Red, as well as Dartmouth upsetting the number 2 Yale Bulldogs. Let's start here in Hamden with Quinnipiac beating Cornell. It was just an offensive explosion for the Bobcats. They had 15 goals in 3 games. 11 different players scored their goals. All 4 lines were just rolling on all cylinders. Just a very impressive job by the Bobcats. Bo Pieper, he had 2 goals in Game 3, doubling his season total. Chase Prisky also had 2 goals in Game 2. That doubled his season total. And while the first line didn't show up all 3 games, Sam Annis did score a goal in Game 3, and he said after the game, sometimes there's an unsung hero that appears. It's not always the top goal scorer in these playoffs. So that's just so key for them come playoff time, that any player on basically any line can score at any given time. And then you have Michael Gartig, who had a pretty solid weekend. While he didn't look great in Game 2, Game 1 he did a solid job, and then in Game 3 he played very well despite allowing 3 goals. Associate head coach Bill Riga did say he was the best player on the ice in Game 3. He kept them in that game. He really bounced back from that Game 2 loss. So he's just been huge.
Quinnipiac pulled to even at 15-15 in the ECC quarters with the win against Cornell. Kyle, let's go down Whitney Ave and check out the series between the Big Green and the Bulldogs.
Yeah, so it was a very surprising series for Dartmouth. I was very impressed by how they played, sweeping Yale, one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best, and beating goaltender Alex Lyon, the best goalie in the ECAC. It was a close game. Both games were decided by 1 goal, with Game 1 going into overtime. It was a 4-3 win for the Big Green. And then Game 2 also was decided by 1 goal, a 2-1 win for the Big Green. A few players that stood out was Charles Grant, the goalie. We'll talk about him in just a few minutes. Nick Bly also had a great weekend. He had 2 goals in Game 1, really an offensive spark for that team. And then Troy Crema, he is just another really he's one of the outstanding players on their team. He had 3 assists in the series, just gets that offense going. When he tends to play well, Dartmouth seems to win. So he's going to be an important player come the Quinnipiac game.
Okay, Kyle, you mentioned them earlier, Gartig and Grant for both respective teams. Let's take a look at the goaltender matchup for this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a tale of 2 goalies. Michael Gartig, who had an outstanding first half of the season, and then Charles Grant, who's really had a great second half of the season. While the stats are in Gartig's favor, he does have a better save percentage, a much better goals against average, and a better record. He's slipped in the second half of the season. He wasn't nearly what he was in the first half. He has started to play better. Like I said, he had a great series against Cornell. He made 30 saves in Game 3. Like Coach Riga said, he was the best player in that game, really kept them in the series, and rebounded well from Game 2. And really, I'm interested in seeing how he's going to play coming up, because he's just played in so many games this whole season. He's played in 37 games compared to Grant's 21 games this season. So there's got to be some wear and tear on Gartig. That's a lot of games to put on just one player over the season. And then Charles Grant, he's 5-8 this year. You know, not a great record, although he has come up huge recently with those 2 wins against Yale. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays.
Yeah, Grant riding the hot hand. However, he had a big series against Yale this past week. He made 48 saves in Game 1 and 46 saves in Game 2. He kept up with Alex Lyon, got the Big Green their series win. Kyle, let's move along now to the depth of Quinnipiac. We spoke about a little bit early on, but 11 different players scoring for them this past weekend. That's got to be a big stat heading into the weekend.
And it's amazing because the top goal scorers really weren't that involved until Game 3, the end of Game 3. Like I said, Sam Annis didn't have a goal until a couple minutes left in the second period of Game 3. He really wasn't anywhere to be seen. And Quinnipiac does have 4 of the top point scorers in the ECHC. Sam Annis, like I said, he's first in the conference. Travis St. Denis is second. Tim Clifton, he's having a great season. He's tied for 3rd in the conference. And then you have Landon Smith. He had 2 goals in game 1. He's tied for 6th in the conference. So even when those players don't play well, there are plenty of other players that have stepped up. And it's impressive because the freshmen are really the ones taking the lead. You have Chase Prisky. He had two goals in the series, 26 points on the year. He's just impressed me so much. You have Davidson with 1 goal this series, 12 points this year. And then Thomas Aldworth, who we thought just fell off the face of the earth after an outstanding first week of the year. He had a goal this series, excuse me. So he's also been stepping up.
Yeah, certainly, Kyle. I mean, the young freshmen have played well, but also all 4 lines have been playing well. Let's move along now to special teams. The Olympic size sheet up in Lake Placid certainly going to play a factor on the penalty kill and power play for both teams. Quinnipiac has been excellent on the power play. They've been solid on the penalty kill this year. What do you see as we head on up into the weekend for both these teams on the special teams?
Well, it's interesting because Quinnipiac does have one of the best power play and penalty kill units in the league. However, last year it really was a struggle for them when they got to this Olympic size ice. They didn't have any power play goals in last year's game against Harvard, and they did allow a power play goal, so that really wasn't in their favor. As for this year, they have the advantage over Dartmouth. They have a 28.6 conversion rate on the power play compared to Dartmouth's just 13%. They also have 40 power play goals compared to Dartmouth's 12, so that's very impressive. And then as for their penalty kill, they have an 89% PK percentage compared to Dartmouth's 79%, so that's also a lot better. And Quinnipiac, if they, like those top 3 goal scorers, like I mentioned earlier, in Annis, St. Denis, and Clifton, if those 3 can play on the power play this game, they're really going to succeed.
Yeah, certainly, Kyle. I mean, it's an interesting stat. Quinnipiac is one of 3 teams with 40 or more power play goals this season. They have 9 goals from Travis St. Denis, 9 goals from Sam Annis, 8 goals from Tim Clifton, 6 goals from Landon Smith. So they have a very potent power play. And going back to what you said earlier about Quinnipiac not scoring last year, they did miss Sam Annis up in Lake Placid. He got hurt in their quarterfinal series against Union. So look for Annis to be a really, really key player this upcoming weekend for the Bobcats.
Yeah, and as for Dartmouth's power play, like you said, Quinnipiac's one of only, what was it exactly, 3 teams?
One of 3 teams. Michigan and Robert Morris are the other 2 teams.
Right, and as for Dartmouth, they only have 1 player with more than 2 power play goals this whole year in Brett Patterson, who has 4. That's not going to cut it compared to those Annis, Tim Clifton, and Travis St. Denis.
Quinnipiac heads up to Lake Placid for the 4th year in a row, looking to bring home its first ECAC championship game. For more information, visit our website at www.q30television.com and follow us on social media at Q30 Sports. For Kyle Vassar and Maury Hirschgordon in the control room, I'm Andrew Badillo. Have a good one.